First off tonight, it's no secret that America has been divided across partisan and racial lines. But a new nationwide survey of white and black Americans illustrates just how deep some of those divisions are, how differently some people think of what it means to be a good American, and how people see the role of guns and violence in political life. Joining us now are the study's co-author, Isaac Pollard, a UIC graduate student, and Alexandra Philendra, Associate Professor of Political Science at UIC and the study's lead author. Welcome both of you to Chicago Tonight, and thanks for joining us. Alexandra, let's start with you, please. The study looked at what people value when they think of being an American. There was agreement on voting rights, respect for institutions, free speech, and resolving political conflict peacefully. But there was disagreement on the importance of being born in the U.S., being Christian, and owning firearms. How deep are the divides that you found when it comes to American identity?
Well, the good news is that there is a general broad agreement on key principles such as respect for institutions as being important for what makes for a true American, and also peaceful resolution of conflict, of political conflict. But we see that that a lot of people actually value both Christian religion and nativity in the United States as part of American identity. That what it makes a true American is being Christian and being born in the United States. And what we see is actually that it is for African Americans more so than whites, where we see the importance of Christianity and of nativity. But what really differentiates people and where people are divided is on across partisan lines. What we see is that even though there are racial differences, the deeper cleavages here are between Democrats and Republicans in how important they think nativity, Christianity, and guns are as part of American identity.
And let's get into those guns a little bit. Isaac, there's also disagreement on whether carrying guns at a protest or political violence are ever appropriate. How differently do people view those issues?
It's pretty stark. If you find yourself to be a Democrat, you are much more likely to not support firearms at protests, to not be likely to bring firearms to protests and things like that. And the total opposite is true. You check out the full report. Just looking at it visually, it's very dramatic. So people strongly like this. If they're Republicans, they strongly dislike it. If they're Democrats, it's kind of staggering to look at.
Alexandra, do these divides potentially, do they pose a threat to the stability of the U.S. political system?
It is a problem that we should definitely take seriously because we live in a time where the Supreme Court and a lot of states have recognized as a right the ability of people to carry arms, and many states actually have enabled people to carry arms in public spaces, including protests. There is no essential limitations of carrying firearms in a protest space. So we are in a situation where our political rights to assemble and express opinion and petition government are colliding with our rights to carry firearms. And in a charged environment where people disagree, it is essential that people feel safe to disagree. And what we see from the survey too is that, and from previous surveys that we have conducted, that people are less likely to participate in protests if they think that counter protesters are going to be armed. So there is an issue of pulling back and not participating.
Isaac, you also found that people saw things very differently when it comes to talking about events like the attempted Capitol insurrection or demonstrations after George Floyd's death. Is it almost as though people are speaking two different languages, protest versus riot, for example?
Yeah, it really is. And it makes any sort of effort to encourage, bipartisan conversation challenging when immediately when you start the conversation off, it's framed in a way that you find either strongly negative or strongly positive. We know from political science that we're rationalizing people, and we feel things first and then we make sense of it later. So if you start with, if you find yourself to believe that what happened last summer to George Floyd was unthinkable and that you were a part of the protest, if someone starts a sentence off with you saying that the riots last summer were tough, you're already turned off right there. So when thinking about how to bring people together, you got to keep these kind of things in mind, because they're people feel very strongly about just how events are described, let alone what happened there. And it can make communication difficult.
Alexandra, people tend to say that they reject political violence, but your research found that starts to falter when you get into very specific questions.
That is correct, because when you have people saying that they're willing to participate in violent demonstrations that are meant to protect their group rights, whatever they understand as their groups, or when they say that it is appropriate to use armed violence in support of people's rights. And also a significant number of people believe that the government in itself is a threat to our rights in a way that people need guns to protect themselves from government. So we are creating a very oppositional relationship and incredible levels of mistrust towards our elected officials, the people that we by choice put in a place to make decisions for us. And that is a very dangerous position to be in when substantial minorities, but substantial numbers of people in society view our democratic institutions as a problem that requires violence to be contained.
Okay. We'll have to leave it there. Interesting research you've done. Thank you so much for joining us, to you both, Isaac Pollard and Alexandra Falindra.
Thank you.